The Marlins swept again by the Washington Nationals. In a 3-game series, the Marlins put up a grand total of 2 runs. All lefties out for the Nats. The Marlins offense just cannot get themselves going against left-handed pitching. Is this rock bottom in the middle of June for the 2024 Miami Marlins?
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked On Marlins. This is your daily Marlins pod. I'm your host, of course, Peter Pratt. Hit me up at Miami Marlins _UK. Happy Monday, guys. Hope everyone is doing well. Happy Father's Day for yesterday. Hope everyone celebrated in style. Did anyone else wake up slightly hungover this morning? I think I did. Nevertheless, good wine, good company. The kids treated me well. So happy days. Guys, thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. Of course, this is your team every day. You can get your podcast anywhere. It's available everywhere and for free. Also, there is a YouTube channel. Make sure you hit subscribe over on the YouTube channel. Join us in the comments as well after every single episode. Let me know where your head's at with these Marlins and equally where your head's at with the question of, is this rock bottom for the Marlins? This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can make every moment more right now. New customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Just visit fanduel.com/lockedon to get started. And we have a packed episode for you today. Tons to get into. Unfortunately, the weekend series, oh man, it's, a few seasons ago, the Nats, it was like, great, let's play the Nats. We're just going to sweep the Nats. Every series was like a series win, a sweep. Just couldn't get enough of the Nats. This year, it's flipped on its head. And the Nats are just absolutely pulverizing the Marlins. They played it tactical. They went with 3 lefty starters. And with that, we know that is the 2024 kryptonite for this offense. I just want to say, the Tampa Bay Rays, to me, are the specialists of the platoon. They are the specialists at playing the matchups. They have a right-handed lineup. They have a left-handed lineup. They find ways to win with both role players, specialist players, everything. With the Marlins, unfortunately, they have assembled the worst short-side platoon offense in the history of short-side platoon offenses. Stats have not been verified by any third party, so may be wrong. Nevertheless, the Marlins, offense particularly, just cannot get themselves going against left-handed starting. It's been the same all year, and we saw it this weekend. Coupled with that, Lane Thomas decided to just be an absolute stud. A few other guys for the Nats, absolute studs. The Marlins went with Sean Anderson one of the games as well. After Birch Smith, he was DFA'd. Big Birch Smith. I mean, it's kind of surprising, actually, that Birch Smith was DFA'd, considering the Marlins thrust him into action, straight after spring. You're thinking, okay, they must have really liked what they see with Birch. He started pretty slow. Then he got his groove on. He's been okay, serviceable. Birch, I was thinking, could he be a trade candidate? But no. Birch DFA'd. Sean Anderson got the start. Started okay. And then, unfortunately, 7 hits in a row curtailed the start for Sean Anderson. Huascar Brazaban came in to try to mop it up. Couldn't get it done. A couple more extra earned runs for Sean Anderson. He was then promptly optioned. We'll see Sean Anderson again. As I talked about with Sean Anderson, we've seen many, many starters over the past few years where they may be highly thought of or have been. I mean, I don't think Sean Anderson is quite as highly thought of as maybe like a Ryan Weathers or a Jesus Luzardo, but we've seen it time and again, guys, where guys with maybe the right broad attributes can be Mel Stottlemyred. And often the pathway is they take a bit of a learning curve. We saw it with Luzardo. We've seen it with Weathers. Like, do you remember last year with Weathers? Everyone's like, I'm not sure there's much here. Fast forward, an off season with Mel Stottlemyre. Things look very different with Ryan Weathers. The same was true with Jesus Luzardo. And so, whilst one start, one inning, effectively, one bad inning, things just snowballed. I get it. But I think it's too early to write off Sean Anderson completely. The option year definitely helps. It's interesting to see how the Marlins kind of, fill this now vacant rotation spot linked to Ryan Weathers, obviously going onto the IL. I don't actually know how long Ryan Weathers is expected to be out. Did see a brief update earlier on Eddie Cabrera. Remember him? Eddie Cabrera, I think, is like up to throwing like circa 50 pitches now at this point. So we're going to start to get to a point where Eddie may be able to make a rehab start or two. Perhaps maybe you see Eddie from this point, maybe like the first, second week of July, right before the deadline, coincidentally. We'll wait to see. Sixto Sanchez, no major updates on him. Surprise. But guys, I wanted to go back to the big topic of this episode. I've kind of gone off on a meandering segue early doors, which, it's a Monday. I've just played 3 sets of tennis as well. So if it looks like I'm still beetroot in the face, that's why. 3 sets of tennis. Oh, boy. 3-6, love 6, 1-6. Absolutely spanked by pretty much the second best, 1A, 1B maybe, best player in the club. Friendly match. He did not take any prisoners. He absolutely dispatched me. I was running everywhere. My feet are on fire. I'm still sweating up. Nevertheless, you have to play the best if you want to be the best. So my curve remains upwards. What I wanted to say here, the Marlins, man, oh man, 2 runs all series against the Nats. And man, it's a tough situation. Skip Schumacher kind of summed it up at the back end of the game, just saying, like, we're in a rut right now. And I think that's fair. Like, the Marlins themselves have got themselves into a rut. But let me tell you why they're in a rut. Unfortunately for the Fish, they started so slow. By the time they actually got themselves out of reverse gear, Peter Bendix was already thinking about trading Luis Arias. They traded Luis Arias 1 month, just over, into the year. Your best hitter. That signals, and Skip's spoken about it, like there's a bit of a natural lull that happens in the clubhouse then. And, maybe after that point, they take time to regroup. Skip's, gets them back fired up, etc., etc. We're now in another natural lull in this year. And it's a natural lull because the season's long. And I would say there is nothing less motivating for fan bases, players, everyone, than uncompetitive sport, or sport where there is no chance of success. It's pointless sport at this point. And I know players will be battling maybe for like individual accolades, but fundamentally for the Marlins right now, there's nothing on the line in the result. There's no juice. And with no juice comes a natural sag. Your shoulders will dip. You just start to go through the motions. Your game drops to a lower level. Because naturally, the juices aren't flowing. There's nothing on the game. There's nothing on the result. Every at-bat, it's not, in the grand scheme, it's just one at-bat in 600 in a year. And so I feel like the Marlins have entered that lull period now where they started the year slow, very slow. I mean, they couldn't have started any slower. It's ridiculous. Peter Bendix traded away their guy. They regrouped. They came back. They started to piece things together. Now we're at that lull again. Now everyone's realizing, man, we're over 20 games under 500. Like the season's cooked, fully cooked. And players are starting to hit that, third of the way, halfway season, like just natural lull. There's no juice. Skip will be doing all he can to get the guys up and at it. But when I was watching those games over the weekends, I mean, one of the most frustrating parts is I haven't been able to watch many live games because the way the scheduling's gone and the London series last weekend, etc. It's meant that I haven't been able to get, there hasn't been many UK friendly games that I can actually watch and enjoy. So up comes Saturday, and I'm thinking, great, here we go. I'm actually going to watch some live Marlins on Saturday. Let's go. And then I realized that Jazz Chisholm Jr. not in the lineup. It only his second day off. And listen, I'm all for Jazz taking the odd day. That's fine. No problem. But unfortunately, just the timing was poor for me personally, because I was excited to see Jazz, as I always am. And really, when you watch the Marlins lineup now, particularly against left-handed pitching, because they got that short side platoon that has like quite a chunk of players in there, they're a little bit uninspiring. Like against righties, there's a degree of excitement that can be there because Jesus Sanchez can do anything at any time, good and bad, no doubt. Nick Gordon, we've seen, is a difference maker at times. Jazz is a difference maker. Josh Bell, difference maker at times. So against the righties, I feel like, you feel more confident. But that short side platoon offense, it just lacks spunk. I think that's maybe the right word to use. Maybe. And so when you take Jazz out, man, even against lefties, it takes a step back. And I must say, Jazz this year against lefties, miles better than he's ever been. And was it a surprise that the offense was getting completely carved by this dude, DJ Hertz? Hertz? Yeah, it was Hertz, wasn't it? Hers. I don't even know how to pronounce it. Nevertheless, they got fully carved. It was pretty embarrassing, to be honest with you. And then Jazz enters the game, and next thing is the bases are juiced. That's the Jazz Chisholm effect, guys. He has that type of impact. We then saw it on the Sunday game, where even routine plays, because of Jazz Chisholm Jr. and his attributes, he makes things happen. He makes things happen that others don't. Often, players are trotting down to first, not Jazz. Full gasolina. And when it's full gasolina, the pitcher then has to go full gasolina. And full gasolina, pitchers trying to field balls, anything can happen. And Jazz was quick to point out, that ball's on the deck, baby, as he was gliding by. Love to see it. Jazz, at this point in the year, he's the only spark in this offense. I put out a tweet as I was watching this game on Saturday. Of any of the teams that have won 30 games or more, so like you rule out the real dross of the year, and everyone's like in that bunch group now, right? How many Marlins offensive guys are starting for any of them teams? Like, honestly, and I know we're all Marlins fans and we watch the Marlins more often than any other club. And we also have bias towards the Marlins players. But honestly, you look around and you think in your heart of hearts, like, how many are starting games right now for those clubs that are like still in it this year and scrapping along? Jazz is a no-brainer. He absolutely can start for any club in any position, in my opinion, because he's a difference maker. And we've seen that this year. He is an above average stick, no doubt about it. You look around then and you could make a case for certain guys, like just about. But honestly, it could just be Jazz. And some people will say, well, what about Josh Bell? And what about De La Cruz? And what about Berger? You can make a case for them, no doubt. But they're not without flaw. And I feel like we overvalue them as Marlins fans because we see the best of them. We see Berger at times. We saw him last year. He was on fire. Saw him at the start of this season, on fire. Came back from his injury. The opposite of on fire. No doubt. He's been spotty since. But Berger at third base, okay, maybe not. DH, maybe not. De La Cruz, like, such a streaky guy, limited in the field. Like, all these guys have got so many flaws, where they are not walking straight into the majority of these teams. This is kind of the problem the Marlins face at this point, where they're trying to get this farm system sorted. But I'm going back to the question I posed like probably a few months ago. Who's buying what the Marlins are selling at this point? Which of these guys are going to, if you are going to trade them because you need to prioritize restocking the farm, which of these guys are going to, truly move the needle in terms of prospects? And listen, this is where the value of Peter Bendix and his guys should come in, because it's for them to identify things that others are missing. I mean, it feels like every club is kind of run in a really similar way now. And so it's really hard now to find those little marginal gains. And then it's about developing in the right way. And it feels like the Marlins have taken a big step in that area. I mean, it couldn't have been any worse, but the feedback is positive. But that becomes, the reliance on that becomes huge, because your big league roster, offensive guys, they've already moved the Reyes. Bell, they'll try to move as best they can, but it's not going to bring back any major return. You look at Berger and you think, due to the control, he's probably going to remain for at least another couple of years. So Berger's staying. You then look at, well, who's next? Who else is a difference maker? And I don't know the answer. I don't know. I'm watching this team. I'm watching it. There's no juice. The funny thing is, you drop these guys in, like we saw with Berger last year, right? You drop Berger into a playoff hunt team, Josh Bell into a playoff hunt team. These guys came alive. The juice, the buzz, everything's there. The clubhouse is humming. And so we know exactly what's going to happen. They're going to move some guys and they're going to turn into studs. No doubt. And this is the Marlins' problem this year. They sold out so soon that the team is going to naturally just end up in a lull. And when you're in a lull, it's easy to get down on yourself. There's no juice. There's no performance. Tough situation. But frankly, swept by the Nats, 2 runs scored in total, is for me totally embarrassing. The game on Saturday in particular was totally embarrassing. Fully carved up by this dude. Like, crazy scenes. It's only Jazz that is making an impact at this point, and it's not good enough. Skip's got a big job on his hands at this point, in my opinion. Let's hit the first ad, then I want to talk about Jesus Luzardo specifically, and A, how he plowed through an injury, but secondly, what I want to talk about with Jesus Luzardo is he struggling because of the pressure? Is this the Sandy effect on Jesus Luzardo? He's being asked to be the ace, carry the rotation. And really, what we soon realize is Sandy and the value that he brings and the leader that he is frankly irreplaceable. Before we do that, it's time to let you know, firstly, about our good friends over at FanDuel. Yes, sir. And summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, and more. You can bet it all on FanDuel right now. New customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet everything from the Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park, baby. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And this episode is also brought to you by our good friends over at PrizePicks. Yes, sir. And PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million members. It is the most fun, exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. Just pick more or less than on 2 or more player stats for a shot to win 100 times your cash. And with PrizePicks, you could turn $10 into 1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. You can make a PrizePicks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. You just pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and you're locked in, baby. And if you're looking for promotions, PrizePicks has got you covered every single week. From lowering select player stats projections on Tuesdays, which increases your chance of getting a win, to getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. So what you have to do is download the app today. It's PrizePicks, and you use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, guys, welcome back to Locked on Marlins with me, Peter Pratt. It is Monday, the 17th of June, and we are running long on this episode. I have completely botched the timings, but I appreciate you joining me. I feel like it's linked to this tennis, like the adrenaline is still pumping, still feeling it. Nevertheless, I wanted to segue into Jesus Luzardo specifically. And what we saw from Jesus Luzardo on Sunday was at first glance, extremely discouraging. The velo, when I say way down, I'm talking like 3-4 miles per hour down on the fastball. Like in fastball, measurements, let's say, that's way down. And usually that is not a good sign. Luzardo then, got through 5 innings, 77 pitches, I believe it was then then exited the game, and everyone's thinking, oh boy, and I've spoken about this many times, clearly the Marlins are entertaining the possibility that Luzardo could be moved, and he could be moved this year. And naturally, those plans will be heavily scuppered if Jesus Luzardo lands on the IL or anything similar. So the health is a question mark. However, what we heard after the game from Skip Schumacher was that Jesus Luzardo was dealing with some sort of back tightness, back issue headed into the game. He was touch and go, but he plowed through as the warrior he is. It was 77 pitches. It was 5 innings, 5 hits, 2 earned runs, 3 walks. And those 2 earned runs were 2 bombs. Lane Thomas, of course, piling in. So it was fine from Jesus Luzardo, but he's now sitting on the year at a 5 ERA, straight up. And the point I wanted to call out with Luzardo is, again, it kind of links back to the offense side, where when you've got the juice and things are rolling, it feels like hits become contagious, right? And then people are hitting around you in the games, you're winning games, and confidence just builds. Right now, for the Marlins, there's just a lack of confidence in the offensive side. They're struggling. It's only really Jazz that's doing anything, to be honest. From a pitching perspective, the main variance from this year is that Sandy isn't around for the whole season. And Jesus Luzardo has been asked to step up into, a bigger role. He's still asked to throw the same amount of innings, let's say, pitch every 5 days. It's not like we're saying, hey, Jesus, we need to go every 3 days now. We want 250 innings. But there's a psychological element, I think, in play here with Jesus Luzardo, where he has been asked to step up to the, de facto ace, right? Where you get the ball opening day. There's, you're seen as the one. You're seen as the guy. You've had a career year the previous year. He's earned that situation. Sandy's not around. The team needs you. And I'm just wondering if Jesus Luzardo is feeling that a bit. Just feeling that extra pressure. Trying to do a bit too much. And with that, maybe we're just seeing, not quite the best version of Jesus Luzardo. Let me know what you think. It definitely hasn't been as effective as last year, whether it's mental, whether it's mechanical, whether it's bad luck. I mean, there's so much variance year to year. But, and I know it probably doesn't help, right? That he knows that there was, trade rumors circulating all through the offseason. That doesn't help. Again, I'm talking about the offensive guys. There's no juice. But from a pitching perspective, if you know that at any moment you could be traded and you don't know where to, it's got to play on your mind. It has to. I know you try to block it out, but all of these things add up. All these little moments in the game where you start to have those thoughts, those doubts, those question marks, and the pressure that you probably put on yourself. Sandy's not around. I've got to step up. I've got to be Sandy. No one can be Sandy. Sandy's Sandy. There are no other Sandys in Major League Baseball. That's the crazy thing. There are no other Sandy Alcantaras. He is completely unique. He's a unicorn. And so for Jesus Luzardo, he cannot become that. He isn't the same pitcher, clearly. No one is. But I do just wonder if that pressure of trying to play that role has slightly impacted him. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you've seen. I think the main encouraging aspect was that Skip called out that it wasn't arm related. There was some back tightness. We'll wait and see if that means an IL stint. The reality is, with any of this, the season's cooked, obviously. However, the Marlins, they're thinking about Luzardo and his future. And clearly, another stint on the IL is not a good thing. So they've got to weigh this up. There's a balance here. Like, season's cooked? Do you push through with Luzardo, take the risk, or do you sit him now? Another little stint. Jesus, listen, just get yourself right. Come back. We'll wait and see. But with that, does that create the seeds of doubt? Does that devalue the asset, so to speak? It's a really tricky one. It's a really tricky one. And I know what I would do personally. Like, I mean, I'm not in the room. I don't know what Jesus Luzardo is saying. I mean, he worked through 77 pitches, but at this point, there's just no reason. You've got 2 years of control. It's not like you have to. It has to be now. There is no need. It doesn't have to be now. Sit him. Make sure this doesn't turn out to be something even more disastrous. You have to protect your asset at this point. And if there's a twinge in the back, the next thing means you're throwing slightly off. Your velo's like, it throws everything off. And it would be a complete disaster for everyone. Jesus Luzardo, firstly. The Marlins, Skip, Peter Bendix, everyone. If they ask him to plow through and then something more severe happens, that would be an absolute catastrophe, and one that, would verge on malpractice, to be honest with you. We've got to spill over from the mailbag. So I want to hit a couple of questions from the mailbag briefly. But before we do that, it's time to let you know about our good friends over at SupplyHouse. Yes, sir. Who's in the house? It's SupplyHouse. And you can get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? No problem. Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business, and always talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trademaster program. Every Trademaster gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every single order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. All right, guys, welcome back to the final segment, of which this really is the final segment. The episode is running long, but as always, there's so much that happens over a weekend. The game is actually just about to start in a few minutes' time, so my schedule's all over the show. But I did have a few questions that were submitted for a mailbag episode that I was running behind on as well. So it is right for me to ask those now, and maybe we'll spill a few more into tomorrow's episode. So Jeremiah, host of the Marlins 9 pod, friend of the show. I think I might be on that podcast this week, so I'm looking forward to speaking to Jeremiah. Spoiler alert on that one. So Jeremiah asked, as the Marlins transition into this rebuild, that is a topical point in itself. Who is the core they build around? Boy, oh boy, that is one hell of a question. Who is the core that they build around? The reality is Yuri Perez is part of that. But honestly, beyond that, it's up for debate, I think. I think the core really starts to become Yuri Perez, Max Meyer, Sandy maybe for next year, but really, like, we know what's going to happen with Sandy, unfortunately, in that he'll be moved at some point. Like, he's not going to see out this contract. The Marlins rebuild is going to gather momentum. So I think you end up with like a, Yuri Perez, Max Meyer, Noble Meyer, Thomas White. Those are the guys. They're going to build around those guys that I think they really, really like. From an offensive perspective, and this is where things get really hairy, in my opinion, it's really tough to see because, they've already done the hard, they had done the hard work in finding a guy like Luis Arias. He's the type of guy that you could build around because his skill set really is unlikely to diminish over the next 5 to 6 years. You could build around him, traded. Jazz Chisholm Jr., his skill set is of one that's relatively, I won't want to say unique, but he's a difference maker. And he's the type of guy that you could build around. Unfortunately, probably going to be traded. I want to talk more about on Jazz specifically tomorrow because links to the All-Star voting, and actually who the Marlins All-Star could be. So I'm going to talk about that tomorrow, by the way. But I look around at the offensive core, and I'm struggling. I mean, are the guys they've just acquired from the Padres, is that going to be the next wave of core? Victor Mesa Jr., Griffin Conine? I mean, man, the offensive side is littered with question marks. I don't think you can claim that Brian De La Cruz, Jesus Sanchez could be part of a core. If it is, it's probably a pretty weak core. And I think that's really the problem that the Marlins have got to try to answer here is Arias is gone. Bell's going to be gone. Tim Anderson's going to be gone. That's the spine of a team right there. Berger's going to remain. Jazz is probably going to be gone. Who's going to be left here on this offensive, in the offensive group? And this is the offensive group right now that's already just put up 2 runs in a single series. So, Jeremiah, to answer your question, who would I build around? I think, unfortunately, the guys I would build around is the guys that the Peter Bendix isn't. You've got Sandy. You've got to build around. I've already spoken about it today, about how Sandy, the role that he plays, impacts the rest of the rotation. And when the rotation is humming, so is the bullpen. And when the bullpen's humming, so is the team. You take Sandy out, it destabilizes that. Luzardo's trying to do too much. Few other guys trying to do too much. Rotation struggling. Bullpen struggles. Offense struggles. It's all connected. Build around Sandy. He's an absolute stud. You have him under control. You had Arias moved. You have Jazz probably going to be moved. That is the definition of a rebuild, though, by the way. I know there's been a lot of discourse on that topic over the past few days. But I'm really struggling to see who, in the current group of names, what that looks like. I think from a pitcher perspective, it does look a little bit clearer. Yuri Perez, Max Meyer, Noble Meyer, Thomas White, Braxy, Trevor, I don't know. Like, they'll have another, like, a fifth starter, but that's who I think the core is. Right, guys, we're run out of time. Thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen. The Cardinals and Marlins start their series this evening. They've pulled the start time earlier as well to allow for the Florida Panthers Game 5. So best wishes to the Florida Panthers. Hopefully, a Florida team is celebrating tomorrow. The Marlins looking to snap this losing streak. I look forward to seeing you then.